Hey everyone, and welcome back to Token Talk. Now today I want to talk about SUI because SUI, it just frankly looks unstoppable. It's one of the strongest charts I think we're seeing in crypto. It's looking almost bulletproof. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that today, go into that a little bit deeper, look at some data, all that type of stuff, just so we can see, like, in what I would consider a pretty nicely sized pullback, how we're seeing SUI hold up, I think in my mind is really, really impressive. So, let's go ahead, dive right in and take a quick look. So starting out, what we can see obviously on the day, almost everything red. We can see Hyperliquid is up. Hyperliquid doing really quite well, kind of defying logic, at least in my mind a little bit. But overall, we can see kind of aside from Hyperliquid, basically the entire rest of the market is down. We can see that BitGet and Move are up in addition to Hyperliquid, but basically everything else across the market is down roughly, I would say 20% average. We can see XRP actually doing relatively well, only down about 6%. And then here we have SUI down, it's actually not even mentioned, meaning it's pretty small, only 1.7% on the week. So things looking pretty good, kind of like I said, for a couple of these. I mentioned XRP because we're going to be using them in a comparison in a second. And actually, let's just go move on ahead and check that out right now, because what we can see here is this is the SUI chart using the beginning of November. So price starts essentially over here at the beginning of November. And what we can see is this is essentially like the percentage in returns performance that we have seen through a lot of like the majors in the market alongside SUI. So obviously SUI is the one that we're seeing here with candles. Everything else is lines. The top one here is XRP. Obviously XRP has done incredibly over the past month or so, really, in my opinion, defying all forms of logic and really any sort of like reality in the world and putting in some massive gains. We have seen it is kind of consolidating a little bit since we saw that kind of ridiculous push up to almost the $3 mark. And then from there, it kind of has been consolidating a little bit like I was mentioning. Now from here, we can see above SUI also being ADA, Cardano doing very, very well. Again, essentially having a very similar type of run compared to XRP, but just not to the same magnitude. Doing very, very well though. And then here, obviously we can see SUI doing really, really well, 124% in just like 6 weeks or 7 weeks maybe at this point. Really, really, really strong. And so next up, we can see at the 40%, this is actually at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has obviously returned us really, really well, doing quite strongly here. But again, nothing even close in comparison to SUI, which I think makes sense. I mean, Bitcoin is obviously a much larger market cap, moves a lot more dramatically, things like that. And then also we can see next to that, we can see Ethereum here at the 34% gain. Again, similar type of situation, not as big as Bitcoin, but moving a decent bit over the past 6 or 8 weeks, let's say. And then here down at 10%, we actually have Solana. So Solana is still up technically since the beginning of December, or beginning of November, excuse me, but really not doing a whole lot. I mean, obviously many better places to be putting your money over the past 7 or 8 weeks or so. I still don't think that like this is kind of the end for Solana. I think Solana still has a lot to offer, and realistically, I think we'll probably see a pretty decent move to the upside coming here in maybe the next couple of months. But right now, I mean, as we can see, SUI looking really, really strong. Now, if we pull all of these out real quick, just to take a look at SUI itself, we can see something pretty impressive, right? Over the past couple of days, if we look at kind of how the chart has been forming out, obviously really, really strong move to the upside. We have continued to see kind of the higher highs and higher lows. We have run into a pretty strong point of resistance here at the $5 mark. This is something where I think this makes a good bit of sense, right? I mean, this is a very like strong psychological level. I think once SUI hits $5, we'll probably see things kind of similar to what we saw kind of on this move to the upside. We can see some pretty steep moves down. I mean, but basically like strong wick down, major wick right back up. So tons of liquidity, I would say, in this like probably this overall zone between like 360 and 480, huge liquidity zone. I think we've got a pretty strong level of support that we have been holding kind of at this like 430 to 440 range. We can see a couple wicks below here and a couple wicks above here, kind of from a resistance perspective and then also a support perspective. We did see kind of this crash and liquidation event that we did see kind of momentarily break down, but then come right back up into this zone that we are, at least at this point in time, continuing to hold. So overall, I mean, in this kind of 480 to 435 range, this, in my opinion, is looking like a really, really strong liquidity zone for SUI. If we can hold this range, that in my mind is really, really good news. I mean, this is something where if we look at several other altcoins, I mean, obviously Bitcoin holding pretty well. But I mean, that's kind of about it in terms of like percentage. A lot of the altcoins are really pulling back quite dramatically. And so the fact that we are seeing SUI hold in this kind of liquidity zone so strongly is really, really impressive, especially after seeing kind of a breakdown and then essentially immediately moving back up into the zone. Really, really good to see. Super, super strong support at this level and just kind of in this zone overall. And so overall, I think, SUI's chart looking very, very strong. I'm super, super happy with what we're seeing here on the SUI chart. Selfishly, I keep hoping that it'll move back, even settle on this like 350 range, even for a little bit, I think would be great. I'm obviously always looking to pick up some discounted SUI now and again, and the chart's just not letting it happen. I mean, there's way too much buying power here within this range, and this is kind of where it seems to be more of the fair value of SUI, just based on kind of the overall market, what we're seeing, at least recently here. So that's kind of what we're seeing out of the SUI chart. Now, moving on, looking at DeFi Llama, I did want to check a couple of things kind of more fundamentally related to SUI. We can see that TVL hasn't really done too much basically since, let's say, like the middle of November. It's kind of been relatively stagnant up at this kind of upper end between about the 1.6 to 1.7 billion range, maybe 1.8 billion. Kind of that's the range that we seem to be kind of stopping out a little bit. I think we've seen some magnificent price movement on SUI, but we haven't necessarily seen a ton of development within the SUI ecosystem, which is why I think we're seeing a little bit of some struggle on the TVL side, just because there isn't necessarily a ton to do within the SUI ecosystem yet. Again, that always changes with time. SUI is a relatively young chain. There's not a whole lot going on. It's pretty new. Like I said, a lot of that type of stuff, that is what is, I think, kind of holding up some of the development there. This is a very, very important metric for us to track, though, just to see kind of how it unfolds on into the future. And so this is something, of course, I'm paying very close attention to. One thing I did want to bring up is some pretty strong news. Is we can see stable coins held on SUI is moving up. We haven't broken all-time highs. We can see all-time highs kind of back in this range at about the 438, 440-ish $1 million range. We are sitting currently at 388 million. So, pretty good, getting close, but not quite there yet. Seeing this move back to the upside, in my opinion, is really good. As I mentioned before, seeing strong stablecoin support on a chain is, in my opinion, a really, really good, indirect indicator of the health of the chain. Just because if you have a lot of stablecoins on there, that means there's a lot of people who have a lot of money sitting on this chain, just because there's stuff to do on it, right? People wouldn't keep their money in places where there wasn't things to do. And so as we start to see stablecoin market cap rise on SUI, that to me is going to be a pretty strong indirect indicator of how the chain health overall is doing. Last thing I want to take a look at here is volume. We can see volume on SUI being just absolutely stupid. I mean, we saw a pretty nice spike here towards the middle of November, pretty strong pullback here, but then recently, I mean, it's almost been up only, doing some pretty ludicrous numbers here on chain swap volume. We can see here that they broke an all-time high of $619 million in one day. I think cumulatively they're sitting between, I think, $26 to $27 billion in volume. Again, really, really impressive overall. So this is something that is obviously looking really, really good for the SUI ecosystem and chain overall. If you are looking for a new place to trade, we do have that link to BITUNIX in the description below. So as I said, if you are interested, I think we have up to $5,500 in deposit bonuses if you do sign up to BITUNIX. So really, really great deal there. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read all of those and address them if there are any that need to be addressed in future videos. Hopefully you found the information in this video useful, and thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.